catch up with us later as well, if they're not able to join in person. And welcome very much to all of you to the second seminar of this year's series. I'm going to cover a few logistical things and kind of set the stage for the first part of the seminar, which will be a collegial discussion among different members of our university on research questions, their purpose, some of the challenges, some of the specific considerations for us as future generations. And then we will be moving into Sam's presentation of some of his exciting research as well. So here we go. All right. Lovely. So the first order of business is, here's just the agenda for today, basically short section and some logistical things, and then the two topics that we just covered. I think we're all getting quite expert on Zoom, but just to remind everyone that if you're not talking, please do keep yourself muted. It helps a lot. But also please participate, so chat, and hopefully if you can join the discussion in at least audio and or video, if your connection supports it, then it's great to have those you know, lively conversations that way as well. And we are recording the session, so you can review and catch up with it later too, if that's helpful. Two other slides which we covered last time, but I just want to put them up here a second time because we really love to hear what you're working on regarding research, and also continue to get your input. And so you know, these monthly seminars will be running through March of 2018, and we'll take a short break for the summer and hopefully continue again. But there are a number of opportunities to share ideas, suggest topics of interest for the coming months. We do also have the blog post, which I need to update this URL. This is no longer the right URL. So we are equityandempowerment.blogspot.com now. So we'll make sure that that gets updated. Finally, we have the launch of continued work on both health indicators and conservation indicators, building on the EPI study from this year, which we'll be working towards in 2018. There will be some upcoming meetings related to that. We'll be looking for both a study coordinator and also additional implementers. It's been really, really wonderful to work with the EPI teams around the world, and so hopefully we'll be able to both have some of you all work with us again, and also some new folks. So that is the plan, and then we're continuing to work on matching opportunities for mentorship and continued learning across the Future Generations family, including specifically with the center.org, and so that's something that's an ongoing conversation as well. So we welcome your input and ideas, and would love to hear what you're working on. Finally, also just want to reiterate some of the resources that are available to everyone who's interested in research, thinking about research, doing research. And so these range from, you know, technical assistance, being a fiscal agent for funding opportunities. We do have the IRB process, which is for anyone who's doing human subjects research and needs to have an ethics review. We've done that for a number of alums, and we do it for current students and faculty. So this is a process that's available to you, if that would be helpful. It's not a scary process. It's actually, I think, a really helpful process to make sure that we're, you know, really thinking through the research that we're doing and getting some peer input and support to really do that all very well. Finally, this point 5, online literature databases and search strategies. We do have several important access to databases through the university. We have some faculty with expertise on using open access materials to their full capacity. This will be the subject of hopefully next month's research seminar, of what resources we offer and how to make the best use of them, and how to find, get access to specific literature that you need. So we really are trying to expand the opportunities and make that available to everyone who needs that. So, and if there's something else we can do, please feel free to let us know. Okay, so as we're transitioning here to the dialogue for today's session, are there any questions, clarifications that would be helpul to make at this point? Any comments on those few logistical things, and then we'll launch into this conversation. Feel free to chime in if you have anything.
Micah, would this be appropriate time for me to make a couple of introductory comments?
That would be excellent, please.
Chris and Micah and Christy were present last week at Faculty College. Eric Pappas was also. I see him on the call meeting this morning. We had wonderful discussions about the research program at Faculty College. And we then followed with some good discussions at the board meeting on Friday and Saturday. I wanted to summarize two conclusions that came from our collective discussion, and they really are policy statements. The first is that in the research of future generations, we are going to specialize in research that is accessible and done by communities. We believe that there's a huge opportunity in communities doing research about their situations and using their own people, where communities are full, active partners. This is a bit different than the traditional research focus, where you have the faculty and the scientists at the university doing the research, and the community is the target. It might be the place, it might even be free labor for the research. But the policy and the emphasis of Future Generations now is that community is the full partner, and we want to make the research methods usable by communities and helpful to communities. So this is the distinctive niche, and that's why it's one of the ways that this research seminar series that Micah has so wonderfully put together is going to be going forward with that emphasis. That's not to say that some of you who want to do cluster randomized trials or want to do the mathematics that is on behind Micah on the blackboard and want to get deeply into the mathematics, any of you who want to do that type of experimental research are welcome to, and we have great significant abilities such as that of Chris Cluett, who's on this meeting as well, who's highly experienced in this type of rigorous study. The second point that I want to make, though, is that we have a distinctive and I think very exciting workforce in the alumni and the students who are around the world. And from the executive position, I'm putting some money behind this. We want to learn how to use the Future.org community worldwide as partners. So not only are we getting partners with the first group, the community I mentioned, but we're also developing active, rigorous, serious partnerships with .org and all of our alumni around the world. By doing so, we have already a worldwide team of researchers. And so I'm very pleased that Sam Maya is going to be presenting soon, because he's an example of somebody who's made huge strides. And Sam, I'm looking forward to hearing what you're saying, but I'm so proud of how far you've come with your research skills since you joined Future Generations University. But we want to bring other people and all of us, including myself. There's nobody who is not part of this learning curve. And we are going to learn together as a global universe of learning. It is an exciting thing. The university's research is not going to be inside of a building. It's not going to be inside of a laboratory. The university's research is going to be connecting ourselves. Imagine holding hands, all of us around the world, and doing research together. So that's why the title here on the slide, Collegial Connections, that is exactly what we're going to focus on. And Micah, thank you so very much. And I look forward to working with all of us worldwide as we learn how to do this. It will take us several years.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Daniel. That was, I think, a great and really important, tying some pieces together. So yes, and this collegial connections concept has come out of, watching what has really worked well on these Zoom sessions, which is when we can really get a conversation going that spans across students, alumni, faculty, board members, people from around the world. Really bringing their wisdom and experience and perspectives to different challenges and opportunities. And so really looking forward to hearing your voices in this session and going forward. And so these sessions are not presentations. It really is meant to be a dialogue. I will set the stage for it, but feel free to dismantle my opening points as we go into the dialogue as well. So I think I have 2 slides or 3 slides, and then we will open for discussion. And I know particularly from our Afghanistan team and also from a number of the folks that are online, we'll have some different perspectives coming to this specific topic. And today's topic is about research questions, which ultimately, should be, hopefully can be the basis for the rest of the research project that follows. And usually, the first step after you come up with an idea for what you'd like to learn about is to try to frame that interest in the form of a question. So how do communities solve this problem or that problem? What is the relationship between these 2 different factors of interest, that sort of thing. And so ultimately what should happen in principle is that the research questions then drive the best methods. You choose your methods and your process that will best be able to answer the question that you've put forward. However, this is not always what happens in practice. And so I'm going to bring a slide here and then a variation on it. This is something we talked about a lot at the Faculty College and the recent board meeting at the university, which is that there are a number of streams or forces that are contributing both to our research rigor and quality, but also can be really powerful forces in terms of what kind of research we actually do, how we approach it, what happens to that, to the findings of the research. And so we have science and scientific methods and the quality standards behind those. We also have this emphasis on participation and really wanting to have communities be involved as a partner, as an agent, and balance out the control dynamics that can be very academic expert heavy at times. And then we also have seed scale as really driving community change and wanting to improve the lives of people. So this is what we've been talking about from the university as some of the major influences on the kind of research we do and the quality of that research. However, when we're thinking about research questions, there are many other forces too, and they could be funding, they could be the kind of expertise and methods that a particular scholar has, they could be partners' priorities, many other things could also flow in here. And so coming up with a research question and then figuring out what to do next to answer it is not always such a clean process. And so this is my last slide, and to frame what I hope can be a really practical and important dialogue is what does it take to write a good research question? And so some things to keep in mind are, are we actually asking a question that can be answered? Is it practical? Is it feasible with the time, the resources, the expertise that we have? Is it fundable? And here I would say very clearly through money and or through human energy. For example, I'm involved with a global mapping of competencies for health systems researchers right now through a professional network. And we don't have any funding for that study, but the whole network is so bought into the value of this that, it's moving forward with human energy. So that certainly is an option as well. And then, is it something that your community, any agency that you're a part of, it really finds inspiring, and is it aligned with your mission? Because I think that's where a lot of, motivation for pulling research through, doing it, in a way that feels ethical and making sure that it gets used really comes from. So there are at least those components and maybe others as well. And then, particularly for us at Future Generations, really thinking about, who is deciding on what the question is, whose voices are getting heard in that process, and what is going to happen. If we do this research, how are the results going to be used and what difference is it going to make? So with that, I would like to open up and ask for some different perspectives about, writing good research questions for the kind of research that we want to continue to grow here at Future Generations, and welcome some different perspectives from around our family. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen so we can see each other a bit better. And want to open the floor. We have about 20 minutes. So looking forward to some different comments and dialogue from around the world.
Mike, I'm eager to jump in on this one. I just can't hold myself back. And hello, everybody around the world. Because I think the biggest question on the parameters is not mentioned on your list. So enthusiastically, I'm jumping in with a recommendation. In my experience, the biggest problem with research questions has been the time. Almost always, they take more time and the information arrives after it's usable. And one of the biggest problems here is that in order to get rigorous, accurate research, people work so hard on making it accurate and scientific that they actually make it useless because it arrives too late. And if the time for making a decision, which is usually early in project questions, when you're doing applied community change, usually you need the information early in the process. You're not doing an evaluation at the end of a research program. You're trying to get information to make at the beginning so that you do good work. And so that the research questions are set up in two problems. First of all, they're too complicated. That was my first point. And secondly, the research process requires doing the whole study and program before you have the opportunity to get the information you need. So I think it is essential that right at the beginning of the research question, you ask the question, when do I need my results? When do I need my results? And what specifically am I going to use those results for? Because if you're going to use those results to guide work, it's very different than if you're going to use those results to answer, what is the relationship between the apple that's up in the tree and my poor Isaac Newton head on which the apple's going to fall? So let me say this with great passion, everybody. Time.
I have a comment if you're done, Daniel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got three small points. I could talk about this for a long time, being real interested in research. But one is that research questions, each question needs to ask just one question. It needs to be, in some ways, not simplified, but it needs to be very clear and very distinct. Okay. And sometimes I see my students and even myself making research questions, single research questions, too broad. Two, obviously, especially with us, is that we're talking about human well-being here, which could include education, could include most anything. But at least my approach has always been, are my questions leading to the ultimate result of studying something that has to do with human well-being? And the third one, just briefly, when you have several research questions, they all need to be related to each other. They all need to make some sense to each other back and forth. So if you have 3 or 4, that's fine. Let me throw another quick point in here. The idea of having too many research questions. Sometimes my graduate students in the past have had 6 or 7 research questions, and it just seems like they're biting off more than they can chew. So questions should be very distinct to ask one thing. I think they should address human well-being, and each question should be very easy to explain in the context of the others. That's it.
Great. Thanks, Eric.
I have a comment that backs up to what Daniel said. I think largely what you're saying, Daniel, has to do with dissemination of results too. It's not just the getting the results and making them useful. It's how you get that information out there. And so then it seems like you're getting into the area of publishing. And certainly when you're trying to publish in a peer-reviewed journal, it seems like it could be a year later before your results actually get out there. And it makes me think of Dan Robison, who says, essentially, I have no use for peer-reviewed journals. I put all my results and everything in a blog, so it gets out there right away, and it gets a lot more attention than a journal gets. And so I've always, or since I've heard him say that, I've thought that's a really interesting comment on the dissemination of results, because it seems like maybe with that format, it becomes more useful because more people see it in a more quickly also.
I'm sorry Dan Robinson isn't on this discussion, because I would like to engage him on that one. Peer review, we should not discount the value of peer review. And so I do very little blogging because so often I make mistakes. And I have found that in my publishing, my peer reviewers are my best friends. They catch my mistakes. And I make a lot, as I think everybody on this discussion knows. And so peer review is very important. And we have an exciting opportunity in Future Generations to come up with two things. First of all, to use media like we're doing right now, real-time peer review. We're talking about projects. We're sharing them electronically around the world. And we are a group of peers. And so this peer review process can begin at the beginning of our research. For us, when I get up an idea, I don't need to keep it private. I can share it with all of you, and you can advise me. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that publishing in my recent book is Oxford University Press. And Christy, it didn't take 1 year for that peer review. It took 2 years. And I was really, really upset. So the peer review process, we need to find peer reviewers that are not the traditional ones where we don't know the person's name. We need to find a peer reviewer whose name we know. So when they give us suggestions, we can get back to them and say, Chris Cluett, I don't understand your point. Please explain it to me. And we have to have the trust levels so that we engage in a robust discussion.
Thanks, Daniel. And thank you, everyone, so far. I would love to hear from some of our alums who are on the call. We've got several colleagues from Afghanistan and also Ikwo and Kwong. And so it would be great to hear some of your perspectives or questions on for any of you who joined a few minutes later. We're talking about writing good research questions and what that means in terms of quality research, but the way we develop those questions, what happens to the findings, kind of the whole research process with research questions kind of right at the nexus there. So are there comments from any of the alums?
Hi, Micah, and good morning, everyone. I was somehow confused with this research question and research hypothesis. I don't know if it's the right place to ask her.
Sure. Does anyone want to add comment? Looks like Shirzai. Go ahead, Shirzai.
Thank you very much. First of all, sorry that I joined very late because I joined when I was driving. And so I parked my car and I was listening to your presentation as well, and now I'm in my room. So I'm sorry that I hope that I catch all the things that you have mentioned. So to me, is whenever we are talking about scientific research or academic research, so we have to follow the 6 steps. Step number 1 is identification of problems. What is the problem? If you don't know the problem, you cannot develop the questions. Whenever we deal with the problems, then we have to think about some kind of theoretical framework. What will be the theoretical framework? We want to generate a theories? Do you want to test the theories, or do you want to, for example, where do we like to go to induction or deduction type of research? Then, based on the theory, we are coming to the hypothesis. We have to generate a hypothesis. For example, hypothesis could be hypothesis 1, 2, or null hypothesis. So we have to create these hypotheses before creating of questions. Whenever we identify the hypothesis, for example, my first research or my first thesis was about rural-urban immigrations. So there was different type of theories. Theory number 1 says rich people is immigrating from rural area to urban area. The theory number 2 is saying that poor people is leaving villages and they are immigrating to the urban areas. So my context was, I was doing this research in western and midwestern region of Nepal. So we through the null hypothesis might be both of them. I think both of these group of immigrating from rural to urban areas. So in the case of Nepal, for example, for each hypothesis, I generate some type of question, and the conclusion was, for example, in the case because of caste system, because of conflict, because of elevation, I think the people from the north, for example, they are immigrating to the south in order to get a job, and they were going back. So these type of it clearly showed me that most of the people from urban rural immigrants are the poor people. So that context might be different in Afghanistan, somewhere else. So coming back to my first, the 6th step that we have to follow in the scientific research is: 1 is identification of problems, 2 is theoretical framework, 3 we have to develop the hypothesis, and then research design. Research design means that we have to create a research question as well as the research process. What type of methodology we are using for data collections. 4th step is data collections. Whenever the data were collected, then data screening analysis will be coming in the final stages, generalization. To me, whenever you're talking about research question, we have to think about other steps we need to follow. In terms of hypothesis or theoretical framework, what future generation university is doing, they are encouraging the students in order to create theory of change. Theory of change can also be is also a theory, because theoretical framework, theory of change is also a kind of a theory. Right now, most of the donors are using theory of change for producing a logical framework or strategic plan, at the same time designing the development programs, development research. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Shirzai. Other perspectives, follow-ups?
If there is no follow-up, I would like to comment on Dr. Daniel's issue that he was mentioning about the peer group review, as well as what should be done for the result of that. I think in 2009 or 2010, I was attended in a conference. That conference was organized by the British Council, in about 60 representative university from Asia, and particularly from Asia was participating there. And the topic was knowledge transfer from academic institution to rural communities. So this is a challenge. Most of the time, whenever the knowledge is generating or any research that is conducted at the university, it is finally, I think it's remaining at university tables. And sometimes it's very much difficult. For example, this knowledge or this research finding could be shared with the private sector as well as with the local communities. So that's the kind of main challenges. And there was my presentation, because during that time I was leading the Afghanistan Institute for Rural Development, and they encouraged me to have a presentation to share my experiences. Through my presentation, I share about 5 or 10 tools that I was using in Ministry of Rural Development in order to transfer the knowledge from the government or academic institutions to the local community at the village level. And this knowledge was, for example, developing a kind of model villages. Right now, the people say eco villages. So Another, unfortunately, I forgot that tools, but definitely for the future generation, it's very much important. Any research you're doing about empowerment, this knowledge should be shared with the community. They should think how this knowledge should be transferred to that community over.
Thank you very much, Shirzai. Other perspectives?
Well, Mike, I'm not an alum, but I certainly have one or two observations back to this question about, I think it's more basic as far as, as Shirzai was talking about doing robust, rigorous research, to Bismilla's question, really about kind of then a hypothesis being kind of linked to the theory of change, Bismillah, as we explored it in the practicum process when you went through the program, that the hypothesis is what you assume will happen, and then your research question tests those very assumptions. But I think it's also important when we think about doing applied community change that, and I think this is probably, I got on the call a bit late, but some of what Dad was talking about, which is there really is a time and a place for traditional or robust academic research. And then there are various forms of that. And usually in the community change process, this point about data being either too long or taking too much time, the process of peer review. And so I do think, in Seed Scale, we talk about evidence-based decision-making. And I always like to think about the fact that you can have data that serves as evidence, but evidence doesn't have to be data and completely verified to make informed decisions on it. And this goes back to, this question of who are your peers? Because in the community setting, the most relevant peer critique are other members of the community. It's not an expert from outside. It's not, two experts' opinions. It's reconciling that evidence across when we talk about the three-way partnership, and that evidence is relevant to the top down, it's relevant to the bottom up, and the outside in accepts it as being verifiable or accurate. And I think it's really easy for us to get off in, very easy when we think about academic research, for the top down to then go off and work with the outside in, and the outside in peer critiques it with more members of the outside in, and the peer review process is excluded from the community. And I think they're the ones who need evidence. And so just tying this back to Seed Scale, certainly in academic processes, getting grants, all of these things, data is good. And it's really good for a broader analysis. But I think it's important to note that we don't always need verified data so much as evidence that begins the peer review process at the community, which is really just a discussion. And it's usually a discussion about, are things getting better? Are they getting worse? And what are we looking at to tell us that? So it's a very different way of looking at, I wouldn't even say evidence or data, but why are we collecting it, and what questions are relevant? Because in my case, it seems to me often the data or discussion questions, the research questions, truly aren't relevant to the community. And that's really where you have to start, certainly in a lot of the works and applications that we're doing.
Thank you very much, Luke. We've got a couple more minutes, but we need to transition soon. Looks like Shirzai wants to make a comment, perhaps Dan Wessner, and then we'll have any closing comments. So go ahead, Shirzai.
One issue that we should not be confused about the type of the research we are doing, because the topic of today's seminar is about collegial type of research. It means academic research, if I'm not wrong. So that type of research is different from the type of research which Luke is referring. For example, if you can see the type of research, because Luke is referring to the research for development. In research for development, for example, is the purpose of the research for development is to influence the policies or to improve the programs or to improve the policies. That is the two main purpose of the research. And for example, the PRA or PLA, for example, these type of research is mostly coming under the group of research for development type of research. Same time, for example, before I told you that whenever we are talking about the academic research, we have to follow these six steps in order to design or in order to implement the other research. But there is, for example, if you can other type of research, for example, evaluatory type of research. In the evaluatory type of research, for example, baseline survey, as well as in Afghanistan, the WASH program is already have structurized questionnaires. And these questions will not be changed. If we can go to any place or anywhere of the world, this is the type of the question we have to ask. For example, general questions, some specific question about water, some specific question about sanitations, or these type of questions. And the target group is also very much clear. So whenever you are going to these type of question, for example, we have to go to the females or to the male. Research, I don't know, we would need any kind of theories to think about theories or things about some kind of, to me, is sometimes about hypothesis, because we need the problems, and based on the problems, we are trying to find the solution way, and we will select different options. So in that case, we have to think what type of research question we have to develop, or we have to put it in the research in order to find a solution. So to me is, whenever we are talking about research question, we have to think about which type of research we have to do, whether we need some kind of structurized type of questionnaire, or do we need some other type of questionnaire in order to produce it based on the different type of research. I hope you got my point over.
Thank you very much, Shirzai. Yeah, appreciate it a lot. Over to you, Dan Wissner.
Let me build on Shirzai's good point, and Micah, this builds on what you introduced at Faculty College this last week. I think Future Generations is uniquely situated to triangulate the different types of research that pertain to development at different stages. So we have the ability to do PAR, we have the ability simultaneously with other stakeholders, other students, to do seed scale, and with research professors and a longer term scientific theoretical basis, we could do more traditional research. And what we are trying to do, I think, in every instance, given the mission of our institution, is to allow the community to be an agent of that research all the way through. Quang made this point beautifully in Vietnam this last July, that in our Bending Bamboo project, research is a component part of what the teachers and the administrators and the people doing development in the Mekong Delta, they need to be studying that from the very first week of this curriculum. It doesn't matter really what our starting point is, but at that starting point, research is there. And it will be one of these three major types of research: PAR, seed scale, or scientific theoretical research. And I think the way you posed it during Faculty College, Michael, was excellent in that it put us on the spot to figure out, can we triangulate the three of these?
Great. Thank you all very much. I appreciate the perspectives. This is very helpful, I think, to us as the university, as the center, thinking about how we work across the different components of the university and really try to figure out, triangulating between these, finding the right place for the right components of these different fields of thought that we can build on, and really keeping at the center the importance of supporting and working collectively and using research to further the work that we do with communities. So we have to transition. Sam Maya has been standing by very patiently. I'm looking forward to talking about a specific example of some research that he's really excited about. So I want to turn over to him to make a short presentation of his ideas. And then we'll have time for a short discussion on that project as well. So hope you all will be able to perhaps tie some of these ideas to specific examples. So I'm going to share my screen and turn over to Sam for his presentation. Go ahead, Sam.
Hello, Micah.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
Go ahead.
Okay. It's afternoon here in Malawi. And welcome to Malawi, where I think I need to do this research. I've just completed the certificate course. That's with the seed scale. Then within the component of seed scale, I looked at some of the things that us as service providers have a shortfall on, particularly looking at how we serve the excluded people and how can they be included in our programming. So I thought of doing a research which is titled Serving Out the Excluded, which is an inclusion study on water, sanitation, and hygiene technologies in Malawi. I know we were just discussing on the research question. Now I came up with this research question. How do we address exclusion from WASH as it relates to wider inequalities in access, use, power relations, and control over water, sanitation, and hygiene? So coming up with this research question, I was looking at these marginalized people. How inclusive can they be in our programming? Now, I came up with looking at what this research wants to address. That's understanding the reasons why people lack access to basic water and sanitation. Basically looking at parameters like political, economic, social, and cultural. We can also go as far as religion, but basically I looked at these 4 parameters. Why are these people excluded? And we also want also to address it in the way that we should also engage duty bearers who are the service providers to strengthen their capacity to fulfill obligations, because each and every service provider, when it is going to the community, it has an obligation to meet. And now looking at the as a WASH player, we saw that some of the obligations are not met. In terms of increasing their accountability or responsive to what the people need in order to address some of their rights or other parameters that the community can be served better. And you also looked at working closely with those who do not have access to WASH in order to empower them and claim their rights to WASH. We want to work closely with these people. Why are they excluded? And if they are excluded, how do we incorporate them into our programming? It will also address how to apply human rights principles of participation, non-discrimination, transparency, and accountability it will also influence duty bearers to consider accommodating excluded and marginalized people into WASH policies, strategies, and activities. The research description is to access to safe water, improved hygiene, and sanitation is a human right. Because all these people whom we save, if we say want a person to have a latrine through our other approaches like zero tests and the other approaches like PRA, we are trying to give a service so that these people they should have a human right, which is access to safe water, improved hygiene, and sanitation. Now, having that in mind, we also thought of looking at these services. They are underpinned as human development, and it can transform a life of a person, so that people they are able to overcome poverty. So in this case, we also looked at I also looked at such things that these people they have these they need to develop, which the development itself will lead them to overcome poverty, but they are marginalized. And also, it is believed that poverty and marginalization and social exclusion are intricately linked. All these are somehow linked, and they make a person vulnerable. Coming to that, I also considered the tasks in the set scale, looking at the principle of fairness, whereby we say water is life, and because water is life, it has to be accessed by everybody. But these people have been excluded. How do they come in as the people who can be alleviated from their poverty? It also looked equity. It also looked at some parameters like equity involves recognizing that people are different, have different, and need different support and resources to ensure their rights are realized. Looking at the marginalized people or these excluded people, how we have to recognize them that they exist, and how do we serve them better so that they are also given their rights. And also looking at the disparities and disadvantages within families and communities, looking at the barriers that these communities have in terms of accessing services, that is WASH services, and the other developing ways to overcome them. And I also looked at inclusion as a process of ensuring that all are able to participate fully. The marginalized, because when we go to the field, we summon everybody to a meeting, but when it comes to distribution of resources now as a response to what the community needs, we see that other people are left out. And within the inclusion, I saw that inclusion is also a development issue. Being a development issue in terms that all the people, because if we don't save other people, or if other people don't respond to what we need or what they want to for their own development, then they will lag behind. And we also look at inclusion, not just about improving access to services, but also supporting people, including those discriminated against and marginalized, so that we engage in a wider process to ensure that rights and needs are recognized. And inclusion also integrates the marginalized into political system in order to uphold their access to wash, especially water. Because in most instances, we have seen even in the political arena, whereby politicians use it as a campaign tool, but they still not discriminate other people, other part of people, other portion of people, of which we can say they are marginalized. And looking at equity and inclusion, I saw that they are both interrelated, because if we say equity and inclusion, it requires better recognition of understanding of differential needs of people, of individuals and groups. It also identifies and it also tackles the root causes of exclusion, and promoting and supporting their exclusion in decision making. These people, once we recognize them, it promotes and it also supports how they can be included within the society, and they can contribute positively to decision-making process. And it also identifies and we are able to implement appropriate and sustainable solutions. Coming down to the pump designs and technologies that we are using, you can see from the pictures on the pump designs and technologies. That's the next slide. We see that that one is a hand pump. On that hand pump, looking at somebody who is crippled, that's a person who is having a disability. How can he or she fetch water from this pump? Because that pump, there is no lamp, there is no anything to support somebody who is, even if somebody is blind, can't be supported on this one. Looking at the middle one, it's a deep well, a shallow well, but it's open. And the women are using a bucket to draw water from the well. And in this case, from somebody who maybe somebody who is blind, how can he or she access water from this water point? And on the far right there, we see somebody a tap stand where that gentleman is standing. It's a tap stand, and when you look at the apron of that tap stand, you'll see that there is nothing that can support somebody who is having some disability, who is having a disability, because it doesn't have anything for it to make somebody with a disability to have access to water. Next slide. On the pump on the left, you'll find where there are those young boys standing. You see that pump, how they pump it. It's open. You open it on top, and you pump as if you are pumping a vehicle tire. So in this case, how can somebody who is having a disability be supported? So that's why I thought of this research. Even the other pump on the right, it's also a type of technology that is used here in Malawi. And how does somebody with a disability be supported? Because that is part of, we are excluding them. And coming to the next slide, it's the type of benefits that we will have after the research, generally to assist the development organization, community-based organization, and community to address real needs of the people through community-driven activities, and that their interventions do not deliberately discriminate against any group of people. At the end of this research, I was thinking that it will at least brings these benefits to the those who are discriminated, and also it will help development agencies incorporate community needs in addressing inclusion in their programming. That's inclusion, equity, access, use, and the other activities. Next slide, please.
And so, Sam, we're coming up to 10 o'clock here, and I know that the first section took a little bit longer as well, but if you can maybe wrap up here in the next 2 or 3 minutes, it would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Then down there I have the methodology, how the data collection tools, how the findings will be disseminated, and I have also a work plan down there. Maybe with that, or reaching that point, maybe I should have some response from the group and comments.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Sam. That was great. We have a few minutes for some comments and discussion here, and then we can also continue, feel free to add further in-depth comments by email to Sam as well. So any comments? I know that we have some experts in WASH from our Afghanistan team as well, so maybe we can go there first.
I'm sure you're talking about Engineer Tahir, yeah?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, please.
Yes, good morning to everybody. There is morning, and the rest, I don't know about the time. Actually, at the beginning, I missed the lecture. Just I was watching the presentation because my computer was muted and I didn't hear anything. But thanks, Sam Maya, for your nice presentation. But I have some few questions regarding to this research that you did for this WASH project in Malawi. Yes, you mentioned reason why the people, the lack of access to basic water and sanitation is political, economical, social, culture, but there is nothing about the drought affected areas. If there is drought affected areas, what will be the conclusion or the result if the people are facing with such problem? In the meantime, it should be mentioned somewhere if the area that you did this research for. And the other is a baseline survey, as Joseph mentioned for this WASH project. There are specific questionnaires which could be used everywhere. Maybe some point will be different, but this general things, but some points will be according to the situation over there. And did you proceed with the baseline survey? For example, in baseline survey, the waterborne diseases should be indicated or calculated. Rate of children who are going to school are busy with the water collection. Did you figure out these calculations, how many children they are busy with the water collection who are not going to school? In the meantime, as I watched the pictures, and there were women, they were busy with the water collection. And any research about the health issues of these women, and this research should be mentioned somewhere at the beginning, how many people they're facing with such problem, and the inline we should check how many people they are benefiting from such projects if their improvement the system. In the meantime, for example, in one of our projects in Afghanistan, when we implemented this project, we did the baseline survey for the waterborne diseases and one clinic who are nearby to that location. And after the project, we check the rate of the people who are coming to the clinic because of this waterborne diseases. The doctor says it's reduced to 70 to 80%. I mean, the people who were coming for the waterborne disease, and that's reduced. It was affection of this I mean, positive affection of this project. And there was a very good issue about this sustainability. Do you have any further system to how the community will keep their system sustainable? I mean, this water committee or these things should be also established. In the meantime, ramp was not in your this two design that you shown in your improved wells. How the disabled will have access to such type of water collection points. And yeah, the technologies was a little bit hard to the people. For example, in the second picture, two people were busy for using of this technology, and the third one were collecting this water. And the first picture, one person, the one boy who were using this hand pump. This technology is a little bit harder, that it needs more energy or more force that to collect water. And it's, there is general thing and this wash, issues and the other countries that who are using more reasonable and very easy technologies. If it's included in this research in the future, and if the people are changing their technology system, what will be the positive, result of this technologies to the community? Such things could be also in this surveys and collected. This data should be there, and then it could be very good. For the inline survey as well. If we are checking again our first data that with compare with the inline survey. Such things should be also. I think it's very important for the research that if we have more points a little bit in this issue, in wash issue, it will be improve your research a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tahir. So I realize we're just after 10 o'clock. I know some folks need to go on and whatever time it is, wherever you are. So yeah. I just want to say thank you all so much for this conversation. I will stop the recording